Hello, and welcome to NAMRS 101 for NAMRS users, an overview of the National Adult Maltreatment Reporting System. This webinar was created by the Adult Protective Services Technical Assistance Resource Center, the APS TARC, administered by WRMA Incorporated under contract number 140D0424F1178 from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Community Living, Administration on Aging. The views expressed in this publication do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the Administration for Community Living or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Enhancing the effectiveness of APS programs is the mission of the APS TARC. We do this by supporting our partners' use of data and analytics, working to apply research and evaluation to practice, encouraging the use of innovative practices and strategies, and providing individualized technical assistance to APS programs. Should you have any questions after viewing this recording, please reach out to the APS TARC team using the contact information provided at the end of the presentation. We will be happy to discuss any questions you may have about the information presented. The objectives for this webinar are to increase your understanding of all of the following: the background and purpose of NAMRS, how the system is structured and the process used for NAMRS data submissions, the process for accessing the system and the data, and the resources and supports that are available to assist users. Before I go any further into this presentation, I want to share the definitions for some of the terminology that I will be using relative to NAMRS and Adult Protective Services programs. The definitions are taken from the APS final rule, and the citation for the rule is shown in the bottom right corner of this slide. NAMRS is used to collect data from state entities on investigations of self-neglect and adult maltreatment. As defined in the APS final rule, state entity means the unit or units of state, District of Columbia, or U.S. territorial government designated as responsible for APS programs, including through the establishment and enforcement of policies and procedures, and that receive federal grant funding under the section of the Elder Justice Act cited here. Adult maltreatment means the abuse, neglect, financial exploitation, or sexual abuse of an adult at risk of harm. And self-neglect means a serious risk of imminent harm to oneself or other created by an adult's inability, due to a physical or mental impairment or diminished capacity, to perform essential self-care tasks, including at least one of the following: obtaining essential food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, obtaining goods and services necessary to maintain physical health, mental health, or general safety, or managing one's own financial affairs. So let's talk about NAMRS, what it is not, and how we got here. NAMRS was created in response to a recommendation from the Elder Justice Coordinating Council. Prior to NAMRS, there was no national system for the collection of data from adult protective services programs. The goal of NAMRS is to provide consistent, accurate national data on instances of self-neglect and the maltreatment of older adults and adults with disabilities by others. Multiple entities are involved in the operation of NAMRS. The Administration for Community Living, or ACL, funds and oversees NAMRS. ACL is also responsible for authorizing the release and use of NAMRS data. The Office of Budget and Management authorizes ACL to use NAMRS for the collection of APS data under the Paperwork Reduction Act. And the APS TARC designed, developed, implemented, and maintains NAMRS under contract with ACL. Staff with the APS TARC provide technical assistance and support to state entities in their work to submit data to NAMRS. NAMRS is a comprehensive, voluntary, national reporting system for state entities to report on the work of their Adult Protective Services program, collecting information on the practices and policies of APS and data on the outcomes of the investigations they conduct into self-neglect and adult maltreatment. Findings from NAMRS are disseminated through the program's authorized reporting mechanisms in accordance with established administrative procedures. These mechanisms include the adult maltreatment reports that may be accessed on the NAMRS website, namrs.acl.gov. With the data submitted by state entities, NAMRS is the primary source of national data on self-neglect and the maltreatment of older adults and adults with disabilities. The data elements and system functionality were designed with input from more than 40 stakeholders, including state administrators, researchers, service providers, and other individuals in the field. Over 30 representatives from 25 state entities participated in in-person discussions on the uses of collected data and the key functionalities that should be included in a national system. NAMRS was piloted in 9 states in 2015 and fully implemented nationwide in 2016. It is important to note that NAMRS only accepts data submitted by states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. territories. NAMRS is not a national case management system, and no personally identifiable information, or PII, is submitted to or collected by NAMRS. Submitting data to NAMRS is a pretty straightforward process, and state entities are able to determine both what data elements they will submit, as well as the format they will use to submit it. There are 56 APS programs in the United States, including one in each of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. territories of American Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. NAMRS is an online system. Every activity involved in the data submission process is completed online, and all 56 state entities submit data to the NAMRS website with technical assistance and guidance provided as needed or requested. Data is submitted for investigations that were closed during the federal fiscal year, which runs from October 1st of one year through September 30th of the following year. Submissions are reviewed and approved by the NAMRS liaisons, all of whom are APS TARC staff. Data is submitted to NAMRS through one or more of the components listed here: the agency component, the key indicators component, and the case component. Every program submits the agency component, which provides agency contact information as well as information on the operations, policies, and practices of the program. Most state entities also submit either the case component or the key indicators component. The case component collects de-identified, case-specific information on the investigations, including the subject of the investigation and the perpetrator of alleged maltreatment if that person is known. If the program is unable to provide case-specific data, they use the key indicators component to provide summary statistics on investigations, the subjects of investigations, and perpetrators. The agency component provides contextual information about the state entity's APS program, including the agency name and address, and contact information for the program team responsible for submitting or responding to questions about the NAMRS data. It also provides information on APS policies and practices, such as those shown here, although this is not an all-inclusive list. The only data submitted in the agency component are the numbers of full-time equivalent investigator and supervisor positions for the state entity, the numbers of reports screened in for investigation, and the numbers of reports that were screened out or addressed through information and referral responses. Here is a snapshot from the Agency Profile tab of the Agency component. The banner at the top of the screen with the component description, year, state entity, and status information is at the top of the screen for every component. This is so the user will always know exactly what component and what data year they are working on or reviewing. Users may access prior submissions of the component by using the Year drop-down field at the top left of the page to select the year to be reviewed. The Export to File button on the right will allow the user to download a copy of the component as a PDF file or as an Excel spreadsheet. To assist with completing the selections and comment fields in the agency component, each element has tooltips with the definitions for the element or instructions for completing the field. The user can hover over the black text bubbles with the ellipses to see that information. The agency component is the only component that allows for the attachment of files that provide additional or supporting information about the program or data. For example, copies of new or revised laws and policies mentioned in the comment fields may be attached to the agency component for reference. Once the completed file is submitted to NAMRS, the liaison will review it to determine if there have been changes to the policies or practices that may impact the program data or operations, including changes to the staffing and report counts before approving it. The Key Indicators component collects summary data on APS investigations and the individuals who are involved in them. The counts of the individuals, clients, victims, and perpetrators, are duplicated, meaning if they are involved in multiple investigations, they are counted each time. There are also some additional definitions from the APS final rule to help better understand the data on individuals. Clients are adults who are the subject of an APS response regarding a report of alleged maltreatment and/or self-neglect, and victims are adults who have experienced adult maltreatment, which for the purposes of NAMRS data counts means an allegation of maltreatment was substantiated. Perpetrators are the people determined by APS to be responsible for one or more instances of adult maltreatment. Again, we are talking about substantiated instances of maltreatment. NAMRS does not collect data on perpetrators associated to unsubstantiated allegations. This screenshot shows a portion of the Client tab from the Key Indicators component. Although the top banner is formatted the same as the Agency component, on this component, the description of the elements and instructions for what to submit are included with the element title. The state entity manually enters the data for the current year and the comments in the white fields indicated by the arrows. The gray fields are system generated. Each year, the system pulls the data from the prior year's submission. Once the current year's data is entered, the system calculates the numerical difference between the 2 years and the percentage of change, whether it is an increase or a decrease. If the change is more than 10% in either direction, the program is required to provide a comment explaining what may have impacted the changes in the data. For example, a policy change in the allowable amount of time for completing an investigation could impact how many investigations were closed during the reporting year. In addition to reviewing the changes in the data, the NAMRS liaison will review the comment fields and reach out to the program if there are any questions before approving the submission. The Case component collects de-identified, case-specific information on investigations, including data on the types of maltreatments alleged and the clients, victims, and perpetrators involved in the investigations. It is important to note, again, that NAMRS does not collect any personally identifiable information about these individuals. All data about individuals are submitted using IDs that are encrypted by the state entity prior to submission. The process for submission of case component data is different than the process for the other NAMRS components. While the data is manually entered into the agency and key indicators components, case component data is uploaded from the state entity's APS case management system. In order to submit case component data, a case mapping document identifying the data elements and code values that the APS program will submit must be completed first. Once the case mapping document is approved, the data can be extracted from the case management system using an extensible markup language file, or an XML file, that is uploaded to NAMRS. APS programs map or align their data system elements and code values to the NAMRS data elements and code values using the mapping form shown in the screenshot here. State entities are strongly encouraged to use the comment fields to identify where the data is pulled from in the APS case management system. Doing this ensures consistency from one year to the next should there be staff changes on the state entity's NAMRS team or if updates are made to the data system. The submission of case component data begins with uploading the XML file. XML is a text-based markup language used to structure, store, and transmit data between computer systems. As shown here, the system will validate the structure of the XML file, and the process will stop here if any errors are found. Errors in the file structure will need to be fixed before the data extraction can be completed. For a more detailed overview of the XML creation, submission, and validation process, please review the State NAMRS XML File Upload and Validation Process webinar. This recorded webinar may be found on the NAMRS Resources tab, which I will discuss in a moment. Once the XML file structure is validated, the system will move forward with the data extraction. NAMRS validates uploaded files through a series of edit checks to identify changes of 10% or more from one year to the next, and also checks the data against expected performance ranges. Similar to key indicators, programs are required to provide explanations for large changes in the data from the prior year, and when data falls outside of the expected ranges. Using the reports shown in this screenshot, NAMRS liaisons review the data and the explanations and will reach out with any questions before approving the submitted report. Now let's discuss how to access NAMRS and how the NAMRS liaisons support users. To access NAMRS, users must have both a password and a multi-factor authentication method to log into the system. The password and MFA are set up by the user when the user is notified that a profile has been created for them. Passwords must be changed every 60 days, and there is a forgot password function on the login page if you do not log in for an extended period of time and forget or need to change your password. Individuals cannot simply reach out and request access to NAMRS. A new user request must be submitted to and approved by ACL before a new profile will be created. The need for NAMRS access must also be verified by the state entity's identified primary NAMRS contact. System access should be limited to the staff who are involved in preparing and submitting NAMRS data. These are the individuals whom the NAMRS liaison will reach out to if there are questions about the data or issues with the system. Users only have access to the data and documents that have been submitted by their state entity, including past submissions. Users do not have the ability to see anything submitted by another state entity. Once you've logged into the system, you will see 3 tabs at the top of the page. The tabs provide access to the information listed here. Information that applies to all NAMRS users, such as announcements about the system, submission due dates, etc., is posted to the home page. The data components are in a drop-down menu on the APS Data tab. Although all components, agency, key indicator, mapping, and case component are listed, only the links to the components submitted by your APS program will be active. The Resources tab has links to several items of importance to users, so I will go over those in more detail. There are multiple folders accessible from the View Resources link, including the NAMRS Specifications Documentation folder, which houses the NAMRS Specifications documents. These documents provide definitions and descriptions for the data elements and code values, as well as guidance for how to submit the data. There is a Webinars folder that contains the recorded NAMRS presentations and the associated slide decks, folders for other technical assistance materials that have been created by the APS TARC, including user instructions and frequently asked questions, and this is also where you will find the folder created by your state entity to upload federal grant reports and other state-specific NAMRS-related information. The NAMRS Users link provides access to the contact information for those users who have offered to be a resource to other APS programs by talking with them about NAMRS and their experiences working with the system. The last link provides the list of assignments for NAMRS liaisons. If you do not know who your liaison is or have their contact information, it is available on that link. The best resources for understanding what is collected by NAMRS and how to submit it are the specifications documents, which, as stated previously, are accessible through the View Resources link on the Resources tab. These documents are also available on the NAMRS website, namrs.acl.gov, along with other technical assistance information, additional background information on NAMRS, and past adult maltreatment reports. There is also a technical assistance mailbox for NAMRS, where anyone can submit questions on anything NAMRS related. The mailbox is monitored by the APS TARC, so questions from state entities will be addressed by your assigned liaison. And finally, the APS TARC is here to support you. Your NAMRS liaison is here for all of your questions and technical assistance needs related to NAMRS year-round, not just during the submission period. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. To learn more about NAMRS or the work of the APS TARC, we encourage you to follow us through our social media pages shown here on the right. Visit the NAMRS website to access additional information and resources, and use the NAMRS Technical Assistance mailbox as mentioned earlier. Thank you for your time and attention to this webinar. Have a great rest of your day.